All right. So next up, the Republicans have taken control of the House, kind of. And so we are now in divided government. Biden is in the lame duck. We're not really sure if he's going to run again. So it might as well be the lame duck, even if it isn't really the lame duck. Um, and so Biden's term is over, right? So, if you look back on some of his accomplishments, there's some good and some bad. There's lots of people who have done kind of comprehensive breakdowns of what Biden has and hasn't done and his achievements and whatnot. So the thing now is that no more legislation will get passed whatsoever. I mean, hell, the Republicans, they've had 13 votes as of this taping, maybe even more now. And they cannot get themselves together to even elect a speaker. They can't figure out who's in charge. Oh my God. By the way, that's hilarious. It's so funny, man, that they cannot figure out who they want their speaker to be. Look, they're like almost all of them are owned by corporations anyway. Just have the corporations pick someone. At this point, look, nothing's going to get done anyway. Okay, all they're going to do is they're going to jockey a little bit about keeping the government open every now and again, and they're going to pass tax cuts for the rich. That's it. That's all that's going to happen. Okay, the Senate's going to pass judges because the Democrats have the majority there. And hopefully that they get 51 votes for judges or what have you, but there's nothing else that Biden can get accomplished. So the Republicans should just figure out what they're going to do and get it, and get it moving. By the way, not that I really am rooting for them to figure out who their speaker should be, because they came out right after the midterm and said, hey, we're going to investigate Hunter Biden's penis. That is going to be our whole reason for existing in the House. We're just going to investigate Hunter Biden's penis for 2 years until the election, and then we'll run on that for whatever reason. By the way, Hunter Biden's not a politician. No one should care what he does. Okay, what he does is look. If he broke the law, great, arrest him, whatever. But give it a rest. Okay, the whole Twitter files nonsense. There's like people who are terminally online who are obsessed with like whether or not content about Hunter Biden's penis was on Twitter. Guys, give it a rest. Nobody cares. All right. If you think that's an important issue, like hug a tree, touch grass, find friends, have a picnic, just get off the computer, okay? Oh my God. Anyway, getting back to Biden's term. So no legislation is going to get passed except for bad things. I guess keeping the government open is a good thing. And yeah, but that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the only thing I'm rooting for. The military budget's going to get passed. It always gets passed. Tax cuts for the rich are going to get passed. They always get passed. And the government's going to stay open, hopefully. So that's really all that matters in terms of legislation. Now, what can Biden still do, right? Hey, in theory, Biden might run for re-election. So he's going to have to campaign on something, in theory. And hopefully, the Democrats have not learned the lesson of, well, if we just say we're better than the other guy, then we'll win. I really hope that there's more to it than that. I personally would not want to give someone a position of incredible power for 4 years if they just said, hey, at least I'm not the other guy. That's not particularly a great promise to me of what you're going to do for me. Like, why should I even bother voting? But that being said, there are still things that Biden can do in the executive office. Earlier in the show, we talked about actions that the federal government could take to make flying a less miserable experience. There is, the IRS got a lot of funding. They can do some great work in terms of, making sure that rich people pay their fair share in taxes. So there's more in the collective pot, even though we effectively practice modern monetary theory anyway, but taxes are still important for reducing the money supply. I'm not really going to get into it. But, they can work with the IRS to make sure that the people who need to be audited are getting audited, that we're cracking down on tax fraud. We can go after some of the real criminals, the people who scam people out of Bitcoin and things like that. Sam Bankman-Fried and all that good stuff. So there's power in the Justice Department to do some of that. Essentially, Biden needs to decide what he wants to do with his pen, because there's nothing else coming through Congress. So, by the way, now's a really great time. Look, now's a really great time to just cancel all student debt, to cancel as much medical debt as you can possibly cancel. Right? I don't know how much of it the federal government holds, but there might be some, right? And there's an opportunity for you to do a really great thing to help people. The vast majority of bankruptcies in the U.S. are due to medical debt. I know this one because it's statistics, but also I worked in bankruptcy, and I can tell you people were constantly bringing in medical bills as the reason why they were declaring bankruptcy, because medical bills are super crazy expensive. By the way, there's a provision in the Affordable Care Act that essentially allows the president to decide that there's an emergency and essentially give Medicare for all to a particular area. Hey, COVID's still a thing. The flu is still a thing. RSV is now becoming a pandemic, is becoming kind of its own little pandemic, right? People are talking about the triple-demic. Well, that seems like a great excuse to me to say, hey, this is the triple-demic is an emergency. I, as the president, who gets to decide what emergencies are, have said it's an emergency. Therefore, it's an emergency, and we're going to give healthcare to everybody. That'd be really cool. And by the way, once you have something like that, it's really hard to take it away. And so you could essentially pave the way for like actual Medicare for all. Now, could it pass legislation? Again, no, for two reasons. One, divided government. Two, let's be honest, corporate politicians are not going to vote for it. But you can kind of do it by the pen, right? You can make it really salient. That's something that you can then run on, right? By the way, having the NLRB crack down on the companies who are abusing their workers and interfering in union elections. Maybe the NLRB can do some serious investigations into Starbucks and Amazon and other big companies who make a convenient habit of doing terrible things in order to make sure that they don't unionize, right? We could re-enter the conversation about the railroad workers and making sure that they get a good contract, right? There's so much actually that the Biden administration can do or can try to do. And here's the other thing about presidential power, right? The checks and balances of government are a really interesting thing, right? And so the president's supposed to be checked by the judiciary and the Congress. Now, the Congress is not going to be able to pass pretty much anything. So that's kind of one hurdle out of the way. What's interesting now is that leaves only one hurdle for Biden to try things if he was really serious about governing, is the courts. Now, the president has the power to appoint judges, and so Biden, chop chop, you should get on that. Anywhere there's a vacancy, you should get them. You should appoint judges. You should encourage judges who are getting up there in age to step down so you can appoint new judges. Look, there are ways to kind of knuckle in here, right? To really make it powerful. And then, by the way, if you shape the court system, then it's much easier for the things that you say that you want to do and to have, to experiment with kind of how far you can stretch the law. Then it's easier to get through the courts because you don't have to worry as much about whether judges are going to say that your interpretation of things are good or bad. And by the way, there's the precedent, all sorts of things being laid out here, but if you make the case to the American people that the reason that you're pushing the bounds of your authority is for them, they are going to reward you. They are not going to be as mad about it, right? But if you're pushing the bounds of the law to do terrible things, then obviously people are not going to be in favor of you or your boundary pushing or anything like that, right? Ultimately, all these checks and balances are meaningless unless you nail down to the fundamentals of what government is supposed to be. The government exists for the good of the governed. It always has. The only reason that we even bother with governments and organized society in the first place is because it benefits those who are governed underneath it. So if you are pushing the bounds of your authority and you're doing it to make people's lives better, people are going to be okay with you doing that. So chomp chomp, Biden, there's a ton of things you can do. The administration that the executive branch controls is massive. There are federal employees in every state in the union. By the way, there are also major ecological disasters on the horizon. Maybe we could use the military and some of their giant budget to solve some of those problems. I don't mean with violence, obviously, but to build dams, build levees, reroute rivers, things of that nature, right? We have the ability and the manpower person power to avoid some of these catastrophes. And the military is a great place to do it. Plant trees, right? You could order the military to just plant a ton of trees. At the end of the day, well, I started this segment by saying Biden's term is over, but it's only over if he wants it to be over. Okay. I don't think Biden is serious about governing. I don't think Biden is serious about getting a lot of good things done through legislation. So, through the executive act, I think he's actually pretty terrified to pull out his pen and do things. And look, Biden, you're not listening, but if you were, the right's going to sue you no matter what. Corporations are going to sue you no matter what. Be bold. You've waited your entire life to be president of the United States. Don't you want to do something with that? Don't you want people to remember you as the president who did good things? You could do that. You have the power, even without Congress, to make good things happen. Just do it. People will be thrilled, I promise. And by the way, if you are thinking about running again, which I still don't think you should, but if you are thinking about running again, it looks way better for you if you have done something good and pushed the boundaries of good that you could do instead of sitting around and waiting for the next election to come.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.